Okay, we're ready for verse 26 in the 8th chapter of Luke. Remember, we had the calming of a storm, and we went through that point by point, and I thought we had a really good exchange where it became a living part of everybody that was here. It was not just a text to be studied, but an experience. And that we ought to, that's what it means to study the Bible. I've emphasized this, but it is so important and it's so easy to forget. Studying the Bible is not like studying any other subject, because until it has become experienced in our life, we haven't learned it. And that should be the goal of every Bible teacher and the goal of every Bible student. Now, are we going to hit that goal every time? I wish I could say yes, but there's no use lying about it. God knows. But that's the goal. And there's one thing about it: if you don't face the goal and strive for the goal, you're not ever going to hit it. I've only seen one or two people that could stand at center court of a basketball court and throw the ball over their head and hit the basket. Now, I've seen a few people that could do that. I saw a man do it one time, and he could hit 50% of the baskets. Now, he couldn't do that if somebody was guarding him or something. He had to get placed and get his feet just right and everything, get oriented, and then he could do it. I can't do that. I've got to face the goal. And that's the free lesson to start with today. Now, we had this story of the calming of the storm, and they were going across to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And the other side is always the east bank. It's across the way. That's just like going up to Jerusalem. That means you know it's going up. It's always up. And every time you see the word other side or the opposite shore or something, it's always the east bank. I believe he's not here today, but he told me how wide the Sea of Galilee was and how long it was. It was smaller than I thought it was. Dan, yeah. And he is an engineer to the very core of his being. He wants facts, figures, distances, that kind of thing. And I can always depend on him. If I mention something, if I'm off a millimeter, he'll correct me. I'm usually off much more than that. But anyway, so they are heading that way. Now, I don't know whether Jesus intended to go in the beginning to the coast of the Gerasenes. My belief is that he did, that's what he was going to do. And this is one of the things, and Luke really emphasizes every time, save one, when Jesus taught outside of the promised land. Now, which one didn't he mention?
The Samaritan woman?
What?
The Samaritan woman?
Yes, the Samaritan woman. And why? I don't know. Those little details are not, they might not be important, but in many cases they are pretty important for the understanding the purpose for which a gospel writer wrote. And they all had purposes. But he emphasizes that. Now, these people on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee. Now, that was at times part of the Promised Land. That's where the two half-tribes settled. You remember when Joshua led the children of Israel in, was on the east bank. But very early on, and I don't think I've ever investigated it enough to know, fairly early in the history of Israel, they ceased to be on that side, and they were absorbed into Israel proper. And I know they settled there originally, and after a while they were not there, and I'm not sure that the Bible tells exactly when it happened. I don't know. Okay, but that's where Jesus went. And he went there to demonstrate that he is the Lord of everybody. That's one of the things Luke emphasizes. He is the Savior of everybody. He's not provincial. He's not to the Jews only. It is no accident that Luke learned, evidently, the gospel from the Apostle Paul, who was to the Jew first and then to the Greek. And Luke, one of his purposes is to emphasize that. He wanted Gentiles to be integrated fully into the church. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I want to highlight it again. Given the situation that developed historically, when the membership in the church and the kingdom of God is very much predominantly Gentile, it's hard for us to realize that in the early centuries it was not so. That at first, of course, every person that was in the church were Jews. And it wasn't until they were scattered abroad at the persecution of Stephen, of the death of Stephen, that they began to go other places. That's in Judea and Samaria and the outermost parts of the world, is Acts 1:8. So this is Jesus demonstrating, not so much by teaching, but demonstrating the fact that salvation is for everyone. The Gerasenes were a group of people about which very little is known. But they were Gentiles. They might have been proselytes, they might have been God-fearers. If they were proselytes, I don't know how Luke would have described them. If they were God-fearers, I think he would have used that term, because he was very careful to use it in the book of Acts. Okay. Directly across the lake from Galilee, and that means beeline, straight.
As beeline as that strong letter B.
Well, no, they got back on course. I think that's one thing that Luke intends by saying this directly. Also, this is a description of the territory. It is, if you wanted to get it in modern format, it would be the land of the Gerasenes, hyphen, directly, hyphen, across, hyphen, from, hyphen, from Galilee. And so it's part of the name of the territory. when he set foot on the shore, a man from the town met him. Now, I don't know what the town, I think it's Gerasa, which in Gerasene would mean someone from the town of Gerasa. And it's one of the 10 cities of the Decapolis, which was an independent or semi-independent political group. They answered directly to the emperor, not through any of the satellite kings like Herod the Tetrarch, Philip, those, but directly. And they were not subservient to the high priest in his political power, political realm. So they were a quasi, or whatever you want to call it, independent group of cities. Remember that the unit of politics in the Roman Empire was cities. That Paul was a citizen of Tarsus, and he was a citizen of Tarsus before he was a citizen of Rome, because he was a citizen of Tarsus, that he was born in a Roman city. And so that's their status. And this, now, you will find that sometimes two men are mentioned, but evidently one of them, and this is something I have discovered for myself, and then like I usually do, discover that other people knew it before I did. I don't know anything that I discovered that nobody else ever did. One thing I meant to share with you this morning was that there's one thing about being old. It takes away every last vestige of arrogant pride. That's about only good I can say for it, but it does. It takes it away.
By the way, Charles, it is Matthew that mentions two.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, Matthew. Man from the town met him. The man was a demoniac. Now, he was possessed by a demon that gave him superhuman strength. Now, this is true. People, I've never seen a super strong demoniac. The only person that I feel pretty sure was possessed by a demon that I ever interacted with was a woman that didn't weigh 100 pounds. So, but I do know that people, psychotic people, are extremely powerful because they don't know, they don't have control over exerting themselves. In fact, they can exert themselves so intensely that they can break their own bones.
They can hurt themselves.
And hurt themselves. Just by the way, that is beginning to happen in professional football. There's players that are strong enough that they strip the connection between their ligaments and their joints just by the strength of their muscles. You'll see one running and grab, the hamstring deal. That's what happens. They're exerting so much energy, power in their quadricep muscle, not quadricep, whatever the one back is, hamstring, that it will pull the ligament from the joint. And that's what they can do. And so when this describes him as being able to break chains, he could do that. There's a few strong men that can break a chain made of links that the links are as big as your finger, because chains are made by taking links and bending them together and then welding them. And the weld is a weaker spot than the thing. And I saw a strong man in I can't remember, a circus or a carnival or something one time, who did. He could just do like that and straighten that link out. The man was a demoniac. For a long time he had gone about naked and did not live at home, but among the tombs. Now, what does that phrase, among the tombs, tell you?
Where the dead were buried.
What?
Where the dead were buried. Where the dead were buried.
Yes, but I mean about him.
He's an outcast.
He didn't want to be around
He
people.
didn't want to be around people. Was that clean?
That's true too, but it tells you a little more than that. No Jew in his right mind would live among the tombs, because that would mean he was ceremonially unclean 24/7, 365 days. And that's the point that he's making. This is a man totally outcast from society. Now I wanted to get to that point because that's what it indicates. He had no social support. His family would disown him. His city, he was no longer considered a citizen of the city.
Is this the idea of excommunication?
No, because that is a formal thing. This is a social thing, but it achieves the same end. And I want you to, this is important for Luke, because one of the groups of people that Luke was interested in are these total social outcasts. Because guess who else was considered a total social outcast by the Jews? The Gentiles. See, this is a symbol of the outcast status of Gentiles. Not only was he a Gentile, but he was a social outcast.
This is probably totally unrelated, but when I read
Could I ask y'all to speak up louder? I forgot to put on my hearing aid this morning.
I just have an unrelated question. Demoniac, would that have been somebody with epilepsy that we would diagnose them with today, or?
People with epilepsy were considered demoniac. I mean, with the symptoms of epilepsy. Now, that's a subject that scholars argue about, and there's just not enough evidence. One of the most difficult things to do is to read an ancient document, even medical documents, that describe diseases and translate that into modern medical nomenclature. You can, at best, you can only have degrees of surety. Like people have diagnosed Abraham Lincoln as having Marfan syndrome, and I'd say the probability is 80% or better that he did have, but you'll never close that gap anymore, because the symptomology and the terms they used to describe symptoms are totally incommensurate with modern, taxonomy. That's the science of describing things. And so that I'll just have to leave it open.
Yeah, I guess my question is today we wouldn't diagnose someone as being filled with a demon, but it must still be the case. I don't know. I see there's kind of a disconnect for me in this modern world where somebody being filled with demons. I don't know.
If you really are interested in that, we have an elder who has made a study of that, and that's Jim Toombs. And he is as knowledgeable as anybody, any scholar I have ever talked with about it, and more knowledgeable than 90% of them. So if it is of interest, he'd be happy to share with you, because I know he loves to teach.
I think there is a difference between being psychotic, lost mind because he was naked, and to have an epilepsy.
Yes. Now that I'm sure of, that this man was not epileptic. He was psychotic.
Psychotic.
And and again, that's pouring old wine into new wineskin, or new wine into old wineskins or something.
Yeah.
And so you have to do it with very carefully. Okay. When he saw Jesus, he fell down before him and cried out in a loud voice. Now, literally what he cried was, "What between you and me?" That's an idiom. And I translated, "What business do you have with me, Jesus?" Jesus, Son of the Most High God. Now we've examined that phrase, Most High God. That is the name of God from Old Testament non-Jewish sources. Jethro was a priest of God Most High. Melchizedek was a priest of God Most High. El Shaddai is the God most powerful, not most high, but most powerful. And evidently, as a descendant from Adam, but not a descendant from Abraham, that name carried over to describe the Creator God. And it's used with approval in the Old Testament. And it means the same God. And I apply this, and I'm not sure it's legitimate, to the difference between Allah and Elohim in the Old Testament. I think they're trying to describe the same God. I also know that even the Gentiles who realized that there was one God didn't worship him in any fashion that was very pleasing to him, with maybe some exceptions.
Is that who would describe as God-fearers?
No, they were people who admired the ethical and moral standards of the Jews, and therefore attended services in the synagogue, but did not have any social intercourse with the Jews. So, Jesus, you Son of God Most High. I never read this that I don't think about James in James 2 when he says, "You believe that God is one? Excellent." The demons believe and they tremble. And this is a case of it, see? What are you here going to torment me? You going to do something to me? You Son of God Most High.
So we, as well as plural.
What?
It's in plural.
Yeah.
Also.
And I beg you not to torment me. Now, this account is sometimes singular, sometimes plural, and we'll see why. He said this because Jesus had commanded the evil demons, plural, to leave the man. The demon, now this is literal translation. I didn't change it. It indicates a status that I think we have no clue about exactly what was going on.
Sort of like a hierarchy?
I don't know. It may be now, I don't want to push this too hard. It may be like the Trinity. It's perfectly legitimate to talk about God in plural terms. Let us make man in our image. It's also perfectly legitimate to talk about God in singular terms. And you can do it in the same sentence, because many times the psalmists, the people that wrote Psalms, did that. It sees the man. And in spite of the man being carefully guarded and bound with chains and shackles, he was able to snap the restraints and escape into uninhabited places. Now, do you notice that the subject of that he was able, the antecedent to he, is ambiguous here? Did you notice that?
Not till just now.
You would, if it didn't have the rest of it on there, it could just as easily apply to the demon. But you know that it applied to the demoniac, because he was the one that escaped into uninhabited places. And again, I use that word uninhabited for what is called the desert or the wilderness, because that's what it means. It is deserted. We don't usually think of the word desert meaning a deserted place, an uninhabited place. We think of it 90 times out of 80, we think of it as a hot, dry place. Well, there's a desert on the western shore of Africa that's cold and deserted. The Kalahari is cold, and it nearly in any season of the year it can freeze at night in the Kalahari. 115, 20 degrees in the daytime and below freezing at night. And you talk about a difficult place to live. It's difficult. Okay. What is your name? Jesus asked. Now, notice, Jesus had already commanded the demon to come out. So, is he talking to the demon? It looks like it. But I'm going to, that's all I'm going to say, because remember, we know such little bit about demons that we can't reason about them. Legion, he replied. He said this because many demons had entered him. They all began to beg him not to imprison them in the abyss. Now, I think I went back in all of the cases where the word abyss is used, or an Abaddon too, which is the Hebrew word that means the same thing. It means the pit where the dead are. The deep pit, the black pit, the unseen pit.
Is that the same pit that in Revelation that Satan is cast into?
Yes.
For 1,000 years?
Yes, it is. Until he is cast into the lake of fire. He's taken out of the abyss and cast into the lake of fire, where he, I believe he was will be annihilated. Okay. They didn't want to go there because from a Jewish perspective, there was nothing attractive about living in a dark, dreary place. The Hebrew word Sheol means dark and dreary. Maybe you'd get it in a place without color. Can you imagine what it would be to live in a place without color?
Just shades of gray.
Well, I'm not even, I don't know, but I'm just talking about color is such an important aspect of our life. Mine bought a new little half-moon rug to go in our kitchen because the other one was beginning to get bedraggled and uncleanable. And it amazed us. I brought it in and it had things under every arm and everything, and our cleaning lady was there, and I dropped it and she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, you can pick up that rug." And she unrolled it and says, "Oh!" And she had to run and throw it down in front of the sink, and the room just lit up. And we still marvel when we walk through it. You know, it's yellow and orange, and it's got a big rooster on it, multicolored tail, and see that's color. Can you get the sense of dread,
And drab.
of the drabness and the? I cannot think of anything more monotonous and boring than no color. I thrive on color. You can see I do. Yeah.
Cell blocks are often that.
Yes.
They're drab, and I can remember when I was converted coming out and seeing color for the first time in many a month.
Okay. Are you familiar with a program called Mysteries of the Museum on National Geographic channels? And they had one on John Wesley Hardin, who was probably killed more men in gun battles, and he wasn't above shooting them in the back or the back of the head or anything else. He admitted in his memoirs that he killed 27 men, and most people who've studied it think it was about 43 to 47. And there is a cell in the main prison in Huntsville, Texas, that he was incarcerated in, and it was an isolation cell. It's about as big, as wide as from that side of that window there to the wall, and maybe as wide as the edge of that table. And that's all. There's one cot that's suspended from the wall, and it still has the old canvas mat. It's not a mattress. It's a mat like you do in gymnastics, and it's there. And if you take a guided tour, they'll show you that. I don't know why they preserved it, but it's there, and I know it is. And that's what you're talking about, Mike, and that's what this idea of being in the abyss. It's just a place that even demons don't want to go, and that means it's just not fit for human habitation.
And it seems like there's also this dread of not having a body to exist in or to.
Yes, there's something that our reifying the idea of soul, it makes it hard for us to understand the New Testament teaching. We don't have a soul, we are a soul. And a soul needs a body. How do I know you, Jesse?
Well, by my appearance.
Your body.
Uh-huh.
And that's all. That's voice, countenance, glasses, clothes, shoes, but it's a body. And that is the only way souls know each other. And that's the reason that when Christ comes, we shall get a body like his, so we can know, what does it say? because we will know as we are known.
I know him as we
In other words, we will be given a body so we can recognize Christ and He can recognize us. And He's going to tell the Father, what about us? This one belongs to me.
mine.
This is mine. Isn't that a glorious idea? And what will I look like? Well, there's one thing I'm pretty sure. I won't look like I do right now. Thank goodness.
Whatever we would have been in the prime of life is probably.
Well, I think what we would have been if we had never sinned. Now I think that is the implication of the whole process. So these demons had the same need. If they were going to express themselves, they needed a body. Now, does that mean that Christ wanted them to have a body and express themselves? No, because where did He send them to? Into pigs. A Jewish demon in pigs?
I had somebody tell me that proves reincarnation.
It proves exactly the opposite, but that's, I want you to get these little nuances here, because that's what it means to experience this text, where it becomes as real as your own body to you, where you can feel it at the core of your being. There was a large herd of pigs feeding on a nearby hillside. Now, I've heard people say, well, why was there pigs in Jewish? No, this is not Jewish territory. That's the whole point.
It's on the other side.
Yeah, it's on the other side. They're Gerasenes. They're part of the Decapolis. And it was perfectly legitimate. Now, it's going to cause consternation in the city of Gerasa. He granted them his permission. Now, I wanted to get this word permission in there because he granted their desire or something. But the idea is, this is what it means for God's permissive will. God permits things that He doesn't cause. Did you ever thought about that? It's almost like He says, okay, you don't want me in your life, so I will permit you to leave me. Think about Adam and Eve. It says an angel of the Lord drove them out, but that God permitted it, say. That wasn't His will for them. He wanted them to be with Him, but they no longer wanted to be with Him. They hid from Him. And so there it is. So Jesus gave permission. And notice, this emphasizes something about the evil one. I wonder, do you get it? What does it tell us about the evil one?
They had to have permission.
Well, yes, it has permission. But I mean about his. He lacks something.
Authority.
What?
Authority.
In some sense, but that's not what I'm trying to get at.
Isn't it like having a soul that it needs some kind of physical representation?
Can you talk?
Physical representation, something physical to like our soul? What you were saying about our soul?
Well, he has a life, and that's basically what soul means. He does not know the future. Had you ever thought about that?
Yeah, if He did, He wouldn't have done what He did on the cross.
He wouldn't have done what He did to Adam and Eve.
True.
See, He has some supernatural powers.
But he's
He
not
can
omniscient.
fake He can do fake miracles. He can do a lot of things, but he has no inkling of what the consequences will be. Do you know that that characterizes what sociologists call a criminal mind? It amazes me. Criminals do not think they will be caught. That's the reason that I don't care how terrible the consequences of being caught is, it doesn't keep people from criminal action. Because they can't conceive of being caught.
There's no deterrent for them.
What?
There's no deterrent for them.
Yes, there is no deterrent because they concentrate on succeeding. And that's what the devil does. See, that's what caused him to be cast out of heaven to begin with. He was so concentrating on what he wanted to accomplish that he didn't realize he was going to be thrown out of the presence of God. And it will help you understand the nature of evil. Evil concentrates on what is right now.
Charles, would that be the reason why they asked Jesus to let them go into the herd of pigs rather than into the abyss?
Yes.
They thought they'd pull something on him. They didn't know what was going to happen to the pigs.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I'm making. If they had known what would happen, they wouldn't have been any more satisfied, because guess where they ended up?
Same place.
In the abyss. This is just a little detour.
Good rabbit trail.
What is it? Muddy road ahead? Should have read that detour sign. See, there's a fellow that didn't read the detour sign because he was so concentrating on and we can do the same thing, folks. We can become so enamored of what we are experiencing at a time that no threat of consequences will stop us. How many times have I heard people say, "That's not what I wanted. That's not what I intended." And that it is not only the nature of the evil one, it is the nature of evil. And God comes along and says, the wages of sin is death. It doesn't seem that way to you. What is the old song? How can anything that feels so right be wrong?
Charles, I would like to go back to verse 28 just a minute. I've never fully understood the deal where it says, "I beg you not to torture me or not to torment me." Why he said that to Jesus, and he called him Son of the Most High God. Did it because he didn't feel that Jesus could do anything for him?
He felt the enmity between Jesus and him. Think about the curse. I will place enmity between her seed and your seed.
So did he just recognize he did not have God's seal on him?
Yes, he recognized that here was the enemy. And so don't torment me. You got more power than I got, so leave me alone. See, that's all that evil wants to happen. Just leave me alone. Don't tell me there's a better way of life. Don't tell me there's a better this and a better that, because I don't want to hear that, and I'm not going to hear it. See how all this fits together? This is a living experience, and I'm trying to help you live the experience in your own life. And I think we're succeeding. I
I often wonder, Charles, what the I referred to, whether it referred to the man himself or it referred to the legions, the demons.
Okay, I've already dealt with that and said it's impossible to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to say because from the outside, it cannot, and Luke is describing this as it would look like from the outside.
I can imagine a man felt condemned anyway from the beginning because he had this situation that he couldn't control. So he felt, I've been cursed, so are you coming now to finish me off, you might say?
Well, yes. And notice, he is evil against his will. And you say, oh, but friends, we're always evil against our will. There's a part of us that knows we're doing evil. Even the most criminal person. Why do you think that good detectives are so often successful in getting people to confess the worst possible actions? Because there's part of them that knows what they did was wrong. And that, I get so sick of people that excuse people because they don't know that what they did was wrong. Now, there are a few people that that's true. But it is usually not people who are fully adult or conscious. People whose brains are damaged, who are at a very low intelligence level, they don't even know what they're doing.
The reasoning hasn't.
Yeah, it's just not there. But everybody else has some inkling that what's right and wrong. Now, their inkling may be completely out of sync with God's view of it, but they know at some level that when an action is wrong and when it's not. If you don't believe that, you treat them wrongly.
Exactly.
And they will know immediately that, and they'll let you know, that's not fair. I want you to see this as living. It is just as immediate as talking over the luncheon table in a few minutes. It is just that real. It's not a story in that sense. It's an experience. Okay. The demons came out of the man and entered the pigs. Then the herd rushed headlong down the steep rocky slope into the lake and drowned. Now, what is, and I know I tinkered with this sentence a little bit in the rewrite. What is there is it's a long slope down to a cliff that according to where it is, it's between 50, 60 feet. Just a cliff directly into the Sea of Galilee. Now, there are places on that side of the Sea of Galilee that are almost sea level, but they're
Beach.
well, there's some beach area.
In this case.
Yeah, and this probably where they landed was beach-like area, and then the pigs were over on the hillside, and so Jesus said, "Go, you got my permission," and then, and they ended up in the abyss.
So does that mean then that the demons were forever imprisoned in the abyss?
No, they will be transferred from the abyss to the lake of fire.
In the end time?
At the end.
So the sea right now, they're down there.
What?
Are they were not held prison in the sea, even though the pigs drowned.
Uh-huh.
The demons themselves were cast
Into the abyss.
right?
And all those, here's the thing about that teaching. everyone who chooses to follow Satan, evil, will be in the abyss and will be transferred with their leader into the lake of fire.
Is there judgment in between there someplace?
Yes, but we're not going to go there because I have an extreme difficulty of constructing a time sequence in eternity. And I've never been able to do it, and I never will be able to do it. Now, I may be able to experience it, but I'll have to wait. I'll have to have that spiritual buzzy. Okay. When the swineherdsmen saw what had happened, they ran away and reported it to the town and the countryside. This is Luke's way of saying it was not done, this was not done secretly or in the corner of some place. The whole Decapolis knew it. And so it spread. For the inhabitants came out to see for themselves. Now, they heard the report, and like us curious human beings, they got to go out and see it for themselves. The best example of this I know is rubbernecking slowdowns, where something unusual happens on the roadside. It's not just accidents. There can be something unusual. Remember, we were in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and we were driving along slowly, and there's a loop that goes through it, and all at once the traffic was just back, and lo and behold, when we got up there, it was a mama bear with 2 baby cubs, and here were the mothers and with babies and little children. Oh, come and look at them. And thank goodness somebody with more sense got there and said, stay back, because there's nothing more dangerous than a mama black bear with bear cubs. They are fierce. And then you would think, well, people say, oh, that's right. Again, that's being taken in the moment. You don't think about the consequences. Okay, see, sometimes that's happening when you're not doing anything evil, just doing things that are dumb. There's a difference between being dumb and evil. Thank God for that difference. They came up to Jesus and found the formerly demon-possessed man sitting at Jesus' feet. He was fully dressed and in his right mind. Now that puts the nail that he was psychotic, because he was not. See, to be psychotic means you're not in your right mind. It means you cannot distinguish between reality and illusion. That's not a psychiatric definition of it, but it's a good working definition of what it means to be psychotic. You can't distinguish between it. That's what happens when I talk too long.